and CLG now pushed to the brink of elimination.
And what that means is we are guaranteed a new team in the finals if CLG lose.
But for that to happen, Envy has to make sure they stay the course and find a win either in this game or the next. They would love to end it here, seal this as a 3-1, and go on to semi-final preparation. Let's see if they can do it, heading into the draft the third time.
And finally mixing up the bans. Lucian switched to their first ban, but they switch out the Rek'Sai ban for the Thresh ban. Giving that respect to Hakuho's Thresh and the laning phase, because one thing that's happened in this series is Apollo and Hakuho have just kept Stixxay and Aphro under their turret. They've taken away Aphromoo's playmaking ability, and they've taken away Stixxay's carry threat. And that's mostly been through the dominance of Apollo and Hakuho in that bottom lane.
Yeah, a lot of credit to Hakuho there, the respect that they're showing, and the thing that was banned now shows up.
Envy says, all right, you're going to take Thresh away from us, that's fine, but we're going to make you feel the pain of losing that ban against the Rek'Sai. LirA picks that up first rotation. Also that Varus that's been so good for Apollo so far. CLG thinking about grabbing that Gnar. They do, just to make sure they can try to repeat what happened in Game 1.
Exactly, and that's when Darshan had top lane priority. Games 2 and 3, it has been in the hands of Seraph, and Game 3 was mostly carried by the split push of Seraph, even though Nisqy had some amazingly clutch rockets in teamfights on court.
What does Envy pick into this, though? One more pick before we can go further, and it will be Galio. We did see some big heroes entrances there in game number 2. Maybe we'll get to see them again here in number 4.
Yeah, so if we're responding to the way this series has played out, you would maybe even expect a Rumble ban of some kind from CLG. They do have the Gnar to lane against it, which can be quite good. But if Envy is to find enough damage, and they'd want to have the Galio mid instead of top lane, that's what you actually just throw a ban against, because you do not want Envy to be able to have that huge team fight and the Galio mid.
And this also means that what's most likely coming out as a last pick here is either a flex from Envy, or both teams are electing to pick their supports later because they have been dictating the lane so much here.
2 bans left, one for each side. Aurelion Sol still up. Always got to be thinking about that one. We might be yet to see. Nope.
Never risk it.
I'm sorry, I jinxed it again.
You don't want those post-game threads being like, should have banned ASO.
Oh, this is where they goofed. Not today, though. Team Envy making sure they always have that respect for Huhi's trademark champion. Now CLG with 1 ban left to go. Where do they want to target it? It is towards that Rumble.
I think that's smart. Now Envy's going to have to decide whether they want to counterpick the support for the bottom lane or give a solo lane the counter pick. Because if they pick a solo laner here, it basically locks in where Galio goes and allows Huhi to have freedom of what he is up against.
But you can also pick big old Cho'Gath and beat people for 1,500 true damage.
And have a lane phase that even though the Gnar is hitting you, you'll eventually get enough sustain through your passive that it actually doesn't matter that much. You become a big team fight threat and a big wall, but last picking your support. It's been that bottom lane, like we've said, every single game. Apollo has just demolished Stixxay in CS, and they have completely neutralized Aphromoo, and they're looking to do that again. I like the pivot from Envy. They were last picking their top laner every single game. They'll pick it early, and now they're going to try to pick a counter for the bottom side.
Bard.
El Bardo for Aphromoo. It has been one of the best playmaking champions for CLG, and can actually be a very strong laner, but it depends what Envy decides to pick for their support.
Wait,
The Fiora
mid lane.
It's been used against Galio, and Galio was at one of his strongest points. He could have done it for a more safe team fight.
No
style.
fun.
Oh, this is always pretty risky because the Cassiopeia versus the Galio, you get to bully him around a little bit, but the pick potential and the gank assist of the Galio is something that's quite overwhelming. And another hook. You ban the Thresh, you ban the Blitz. He's got another one there.
Hakuho chips in the game, baby.
Man, you gotta take away the champions, but the play style, he's gotta find something in there.
I have. Chad, are you okay?
I just can't believe he says, I'm going to go for the third hook
I'm
and champion.
playing something with the hook.
I don't think it's a good pick. I think it's so risky here. They're relying on his playmaking so much, but he loses the ranged harass advantage against the Bard, and they might get pushed in because of it. They're going to have to gank this lane now instead of having the option to gank this lane. Whereas if he goes a ranged support like a Nami or a Jan or a Lulu or something like that, they probably keep the lane shove in. Now they have to play on such a smaller margin for error with this Nautilus. It's a bold choice, and they're in a game where if they can make plays happen, they can win. But man, they're reaching to get that third hook champion.
honestly, Apollo has been on point in the past couple of games with those mechanics, the QSSs, the flashes, the outplays, everything, and he better do it again this game.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I look at this composition from EnVy, I'm seeing 1 VIP and 4 big old bouncers pushing everybody away from him. So they better be able to keep him safe.
Yeah. Nautilus, Cho'Gath, Rek'Sai, and Galio are going to send the enemy team to the bounce house. That's 4 consecutive knockups shade on the opponent. So that's what they're going for.
And like you said, they actually really heavily opted into this because Hakuho, he's always got that pocket pick Zyro, one of his best picks. The Morgana's still also on the table that they could go for if they wanted pick potential. But this seems to be a very conscious choice that the Nautilus, they weren't really forced down that list, but they wanted the hook. They wanted somebody they could pull in. And remember, Nautilus got buffed a few patches ago. Lower cooldown on the ultimate, and also his dredge line base damage is up.
Up by 20, which helps him in support more than it does in any other role. So the top lane, Nautilus, still gated by the huge mana cost on the E, but that is not what makes support Nautilus tick.
Here we go, boys, for potentially the last time in this series. If EnVy finds the win, the teams are out on to Summoner's Rift. Keep an eye on the level 1. We know that in 2 out of 3 of the games so far, EnVy's gotten cheeky.
This setup from EnVy, it looks like LirA is waiting for multiple people to walk into the jungle from CLG, and then they would collapse from the top bush. But it looks like CLG just don't want to try their luck.
Early game jungle has been so pivotal in 2 of the 3 games here. Game 3 was the first time CLG could get first blood, but we know with Galio mid lane, it's a tremendous puller of the Raptors, so I think it's very logical that LirA starts there. The question will be, how defensive does OmarGod end up pathing due to the threat of the Rek'Sai?
Apollo and Hakuho, the guys who have had such an awesome performance in bottom lane so far this series. Can they do it again when it really, really matters, especially with, like you said, this pick that is weird? This Nautilus, this against a Bard. I mean, Bard can really bully some of these melee supports.
Against a support that has a range advantage on him, and this is really the culmination of the entire split for these teams. This one best of 5 that can knock you completely out of the split, and CLG got knocked out last playoffs, said they weren't going to have it happen again, rededicated themselves, changed their jungler. Got a higher seed than they did last split as well, so I did show actual improvement throughout the split, but if they are to fall in the playoffs once again, back-to-back quarterfinal exits is unacceptable based on CLG's reputation and legacy as a team. So 4 of these players have won a split before. OmarGod, time to step up. Time for everyone on CLG to step up. And for EnVy, same thing, because they can win their first playoff series ever.
Exactly. Unprecedented for EnVy.
And it's not just the reputation and the legacy of CLG. That's talking about the past. You've also got to look at what this team wants for their future. This is a team that has aspirations for worlds, for victories on international stages. And to drop to a team that not only all their fans and their audiences, but even themselves expected to win against so handedly. It's just not what these guys need to see right now, but they've got to step up. LirA doing some counter jungling onto the Krugs, stealing those away.
Yeah, his route was do Raptors, go for red, then he got the Scuttle Crab. That's level 3 with Experience Point. Now he's bottom. In case CLG shove up, he's there to gank.
Doesn't look like CLG is going to be doing much shoving today, even though there's that melee support on the side of EnVy. They've still got lane control for now. LirA makes an exit with the plant and heads back into his own jungle to continue the farm.
And this is a really high farm path for him, being able to counter Krugs that early in his path and then go into a full clear of his blue side. He would even have the luxury of handing off blue to Nisqy if he wanted. A pretty nice path there from LirA, utilizing that early pull to really slingshot him ahead in the jungle and going for the early counter.
Now Omar,
there's the blue handoff.
Yeah,
all right.
Beauties of Rek'Sai.
I mean, one way that Galio was nerfed was they took away the Dorian stacking ability, so you weren't full build after 3 Dorian rings, but when you have a blue buff, you can kind of spam as much as you want anyway, so it's not really that big of an issue. OmarGod stealing away some Krugs from LirA after losing his own, likely just assuming that LirA was down there, so returning the favor up here, not allowing that jungle to get out of control. Meanwhile, Darshan on the Gnar. This is what CLG got to see him do in game number 1. This is what they need to see him do here in game number 4. They need a repeat performance of Darshan being the better top laner. Seraph will just continue farming up for now, though. Not really any choice until he gets tankier. Like you said, Zirene, that passive will eventually be able to heal him up as he gets resistance.
They found Omar. This will be a 2-on-2.
Oh no, the Rupture doesn't find its mark. Seraph's actually incredibly low here. LirA coming in. Seraph doesn't pop the flash. LirA's on the way. The fight. Nisqy's here. OmarGod trying to get himself away. Flash into the taunt, into the damage. First blood for Envy's rookie mid laner.
And that play took so long to develop. The fact that Nisqy got the blue buff, teleported back to mid lane, got the shove, that prompted Huhi's recall, gives him time to roam up to the top lane. Then Seraph gets very low, absorbing the two-man gate because they expected the three-man top the whole time. And that play started 3.5 minutes ago. They execute for first blood.
Now they're going to try to make a play on the bottom side to compensate, though. It's hard to dive. He missed. Aphromoo missed him.
CLG going for the dive, but instead it's going to be Aphro who drops as well. It's a 1-for-1 so far. Huhi running away. Hakuho still seeing if maybe they can make more happen on this one, but it will just go even when the dust settles.
Aphro missed the flash Bard stun into the wall. And this gank turns into 1v1. Did get the teleport out. Watching this one more time. This flashes, and Apollo doesn't even flash it. He just walks forward. They still dump a bunch of damage onto him and get the kill because of Huhi's roam, but it means they stay under the turret for much longer.
Nisqy pushing up now in mid lane, gets that level 6 for himself, which means if there's a skirmish anywhere near him, the hero's entrance will be there. We saw it used to such incredible effect in game number 2 when LirA was on the Gragas. He would always be on the front line. Nisqy would keep him alive. He's got a lot of frontliners to pick from.
And all 4 games, Envy has now been winning the early game. And this was a game where CLG said, we're not going to have any more of that. Aggressive bottom lane with the Bard. Darshan gets Gnar. They're going to try to counter and clap back.
He's all alone.
This is a really good catch onto Apollo here. Damage coming through. Stixxay going for the flash just to make sure the hero's entrance comes down. No way! Stixxay's gone! And Envy keep their AD carry alive.
And that's just what you're talking about, Captain Flowers. Nisqy is level 6. If you try any funny business, he's going to arrive with the hero's entrance. And that seemed like exactly what CLG wanted to do. It's something they hadn't been able to do in the first 3 games, is actually aggress on Apollo. So they're willing to go the play. That's why they picked the Bard. They don't have quite enough damage. The hero's entrance comes in, knocks up Aphromoo, and gives him a kill.
And Galio is just such a good mid laner when you have some losing side lanes because he can always find a play to turn around with the hero's entrance. They try to go aggressive here on Apollo, who doesn't have summoner spells from earlier, and then the hero's entrance 100% saves him here with the damage reduction. The hook in from Hakuho didn't use flash in the initial dive, and he's able to pick up Stixxay there, and that helps them so much. Really, Nisqy, when he came in, we saw he needed some time with Envy to get that synergy down. This rookie has now had a few extra weeks, and Envy as a whole just looked way more on the same page, especially in the early parts.
Yeah, because even looking at Nisqy in his rookie split, Envy as a team actually has a higher game win percentage with Piri than with Nisqy, and he's been traded away on the latter half of the split over to Phoenix 1. But when Nisqy was in, the team did like playing with him more. So it's not just the win percentage, it's what they think he could bring to the team and how he can scale as a player. He's had standout performances in some pretty big moments, and there's no moment bigger than this game for Envy as they look to win their first play series.
No, he stops it with the Stixxay. They're almost able to find the damage. Apollo grabbing the kill. Aphromoo now in a 1 versus 2. The ulti comes down. The stun goes out. Aphro's still going to be in huge danger, and it's a double kill for Apollo.
Envy's bottom lane has been incredible in this series. They have destroyed Stixxay and Aphromoo all 4 games.
Unreal. Lands the hook there on Nautilus, gets level 6. The patience to wait for Aphro to go through the tunnel. The fact that Apollo and Hakuho are smashing Stixxay and Aphromoo 4 games in a row is tilting this series in Envy's favor.
You guys know I love my interactions. This is not Blitzcrank hook. This is not one of those things that Tristana rocket jump buffers gets, because it's a 2-part CC. It is a movement ability, and then you chest bump him. And that's the thing that hits him out of the rocket jump. It is not like the other CCs.
Exactly. If that's Blitz, the hook can land, Trist can knock away. But because it's the cast time and the movement, as Zirene just pointed out, it's gonna get you. And he doesn't even need to burn Ignite during that all-in.
Jatt, I was as skeptical as you were of this Nautilus pick when it was locked in, but right now at 1-0-3, and with his AD carry at 3-1-1, Hakuho and Apollo just have that bot lane magic again.
when you're feeling it, you're feeling it.
Yeah.
And I was watching a highlight of Steph Curry's 30-foot three-pointers before the day, and it's those types of things that most people can't do, but when you're hitting your shots, you're going to do it, and it's going to change the way you have to play against that person. Hakuho's feeling the hooks. He's hitting all his shots today, so give him any champion with that capability, and he's going to take the shot.
Oh boy, Seraph, like it dove.
Dive number 2 attempt here from CLG.
Nice.
Seraph clears out all those minions. LirA and Apollo, meanwhile, working on the Ocean Drake. EnVy's neutral objective domination continues.
EnVy.
9 minutes in.
EnVy looking really good every single early game. It's just that one where the draft in the first game seemed like an issue for them, where they had to push, didn't have something to really do with the artillery and kind of stop it. But CLG, this right now, they thought spring was a nightmare. They're shaking themselves. They're waiting to wake up here. They need to wake up in this series if they want to have a Game 5. We are 10 minutes in, and it's already a 2.5K advantage.
What a start for EnVy here in game number 4. Apollo and Hakuho, even though things looked a little bit rough after the focus that CLG was putting onto them, they went 1-for-1 to the turret, and then Apollo in some trouble. It was so quickly turned around. And these guys, I mean, flashback to what we were talking about before the day even started, back when we were talking about the introduction to the series, how Apollo was always looked at as this player who's been a part of LCS for so long. He was looked at as a low to mid-tier player who likely had hit his ceiling. And in this split, kaboom, baby. They do some renovations to the building. The ceiling is all the way up in the freaking sky. We don't even know where it is. And this guy's just going off.
They're going in for more. They get the CC. What do they chain it with?
Oh, there they go again. The hero's entrance. Nice escape away from the Bard ulti, and goodbye, Stixxay. Aphromoo now the target, walking himself away, but his AD carries seeing black and white for the next 20 seconds.
Talking about nightmares, you're held in place as a Galio is about to knock on your face right there with hero's entrance. So EnVy, 6 kills to 1, and a lot of momentum. Now we do need to talk about what EnVy needs to do to close it out versus what CLG need to do to stay alive in this series. And EnVy, it's mostly continuing to do what they're doing. They're playing around the bottom side. When you have a Galio team composition, you want to get your carries fed because you can take care of the rest of it with your absurd tank line. Just gets him before he buffers away that rocket jump.
Yep, then the hook comes through, lines it up, and gets it right before Aphromoo gets the stun, but yeah.
The dis-synergy there with the Buster Shot and the Bard ultimate to save Apollo from the stasis and allow him to follow up for more damage.
You know, initially I wondered, because I watched that and I thought that Apollo flashed, and I was like, that was a move, that wasn't a blink. Now I realized it was a Tristana.
We talked coming into this that CLG's solo laners have actually been performing incredibly well all split long. It's been this bottom lane now that EnVy, they say the dagger's already in, we're twisting it, and they're gonna have to find a way out.
Comes the Gnar, but Seraph with the flash away.
Yeah.
Keeps on going.
And CLG's way out, they probably should have done this sooner, is to bail away from that bottom lane where there's so much kill pressure for EnVy. They roam Trist up before EnVy roams Cho'Gath down. So there's a chance they can orchestrate first turret here. That's what they're going for. CLG wants to team play out of EnVy. They have lost laning phase all series. It's time to try and get him with the macro.
Nisqy getting himself away from the Twin Fangs there, but LirA and Apollo have the damage to take down this turret. He pushes, grabs the first blood for that yet again. The push continues, 4,000 gold lead for Team EnVy, not even 13 minutes in. Omar and Afro trying to steal away that red buff. Small consolation prize for losing the turret first blood though.
Yeah, but they're gonna lose tempo on the bottom side. This turret hasn't gone down yet, and you already have Apollo on the bottom side of the map, shoving it in, hitting that tier 2. EnVy just have complete control right now, and CLG are trying to dip around them and find something else that they can do. Right now, it's bottom side control. You put one guy down here, but you have a Galio mid who could make the roam, and here comes the Nautilus as well. This is taking a lot of damage, and Aphromoo is here to try and get some control back of this lane.
Yeah, that turret does survive. It's rather difficult to make your way down to that spot in the map again, so it's likely that that turret will live for a while. CLG can kind of bypass this one, but with Infernal Drake coming up next, I think that's where you're really going to see your major point of contention. The Gnar pick that was so successful in Game 1 hasn't granted the same advantages here in Game 2. Seraph stepping up. He avoided the one early gank that ended up gaining the first blood for Nisqy. He didn't die when they ended up sneaking up the AD carry on the roam, and he's just scaling right up on Cho'Gath.
The Cho'Gath, 112 CS to 128. Righteous Glory completed, meaning he has his way into those fights to get those big ultis off on the value targets. And you really can't underestimate just how much damage that Cho'Gath will do, because a carry will feel like they're safe, they'll feel like they're protected, and then the feast comes in, and in the blink of an eye, they're just out of there. And it's such this jarring moment where the carry's not normally used to having to deal with that can really make these big impacts.
And Cho'Gath is kind of the king of those jarring moments, because even the W, the silence, which gets max second in the top lane Cho'Gath, is so long and so disruptive that these CCs, this bounce house, will come online during that time.
Yeah, and I think it's particularly disruptive against Cassiopeia. When I think about Cassiopeia, it's almost like she acts very much like an AD carry in a team fight where she needs to stand in a place and machine gun you down with spells. But a 2.25 second silence to Cassiopeia does the same amount of damage reduction as a 2.25 second stun on an AD carry. Because when she can't cast spells, she can't do any of the damage that she needs to repeat. She's not burst mage, so I really like that synergy.
It's a lot of her defensive capabilities too. She gets to go off of it.
Never mind, there they go.
But they're going mid. This turret's super low. They just got inside track. Here comes the damage, and that'll be another turret for Envy.
Cleanse was popped by Huhi there to make sure he got away from the collapse of Envy. So without that defensive summoner spell, he will have to be much more careful in the upcoming fights. 4,500 gold lead still for Envy. Infernal Drake spawning here in 15 seconds. They've got the whole Rude crew ready to go.
And you can see Seraph coming up. He has the feast. It's so hard to secure the objectives against this Cho'Gath.
And you know, I want to bring up one thing we've talked about throughout the course of this split as we've kind of gone into this composition, into this meta, I should say. 3 tanks, 2 backliners. It's so good when you're ahead. It snowballs so easily. Well, what do you do when you got 4 tanks and then 1 damage guy? They just won't die even more.
Yeah, and you need Huhi to get super fed, and you need Stixxay to have a hurricane so he can hit multiple people at once. And they're just not at that point right now. In fact, they're hoping for some mid lane priority.
Hakuho, the one who draws the aggro there at the start, but now they're going right back in. Remember that cleanse being down. Petrifying Gaze is going to be able to buy a couple of extra seconds, but now they're still able to find the damage. The Airborne onto the enemy mid laner, they find the kill. Airborne now back into both Nisqy and Seraph. Seraph going to be taken very low. Stixxay wants to grab the respec, grab the kill on this one. Maybe he died! OmarGod going in, grabbing the kill. 1 for 1 so far. LirA having to flash away. An even fight, an even trade for both sides.
Yeah, being down 5,000 gold and getting that type of pressure in a fight is a huge win for CLG. Even if they did lose Huhi, they're going to look for Drake now. They have to go quick, otherwise Seraph will teleport back.
They have the HP advantage, but do they have the confidence to force this with the deficit they're currently standing in? Apollo still alive. The damage threat for Envy still very real. So much of this game is about whether or not CLG can find their way onto him. The comp loses a ton of its damage when you only have that 1 true damage dealer. Aphromoo trying to get in here, maybe secure some control over the area, but CLG will not secure that Drake.
Yeah, it's back to farming here. Seraph's going to go to the top side, clear out this gigantic wave. Once again, we'll see this here. Hakuho is a monster. This guy has not gotten the recognition that he deserves for so long. The flash out, and then the follow-up after. The ultimate onto the Cassiopeia, and then afterwards, the perfect hook to bring her back in after the flash.
Yeah, watch this dredge line.
Or not.
We're going to see it, but the Drake is going to be forced here by Envy. Essentially, he buffered the dredge line right after the stasis from Huhi and still hooked him in.
And the flash went through too, yeah.
Now Envy onto the Infernal Drake. Picking up some more damage bonuses for themselves, picking up more neutral objective control for themselves. They have had one hell of a record for that in this series, really showcasing their dominion over those objectives.
And where Envy has been strong has been in LirA staying ahead of Omar in the jungle. I don't think LirA's actually had a particularly great series as far as impacting lanes, but he has made it so Omar isn't a gank threat. And then since Apollo and Hakuho dominate that 2v2 so much, CLG hasn't been able to punish. And when they have the utmost control of the bottom side, that means they just get all the dragons.
And when you have that winning jungler who just keeps going in, annoying, tracking the enemy jungler, and you have some winning lanes, they can play at the enemy's turret and push them in all game and get those advantages because they don't have to fear those ganks like you were saying. And honestly, OmarGod has been showing up in these lanes sometimes, but Hakuho has been shutting him down with the thresh hooks. It gets banned this game. He's still on a champion that OmarGod goes down first blood because of the fact that Hakuho is able to lock him down. Really, this has just been one of CLG's biggest fears coming into playoffs was that they had to change their jungler, and did they have enough time to get OmarGod to that professional level? Because if you take rookies into account, he's played the least amount of games.
And I agree that that is a huge thing that CLG has had to try and step up to this season. but it doesn't matter who your jungler is if the bottom lane is pushed into their turret that frequently, because it lowers the amount of choice the jungler has. He needs to bail that bottom lane out or make a big play happen somewhere else, and CLG hasn't been able to do that. And that's two of the most experienced players on CLG, Aphromoo and Stixxay, who have been getting outplayed in this series.
I mean, you mentioned it, 4 out of 5 of the players on CLG have won a summer playoff before, or have won a playoff before. These guys are not expecting to be in this spot, again, like you said, Zirene, losing in the quarterfinals.
4 of these guys also made the finals of the midseason invitational and went the furthest that a North American team has gone in an international Riot tournament.
Which, to be in the position that they're in now, they have got to find a way to rally themselves, both mechanically, in-game, and mentally. You've got to be thinking that it's getting to them how close they are actually to being eliminated from Summer Playoff 2017 contention. But they cannot let that get to them now. The focus, paramount for CLG. If they want to come back in this game, they're still down 5,000 gold.
Exactly, at 20 minutes, and they need to hit big item power spikes because they're working against some pretty big item power spikes as well. Hurricane, Blade of the Ruin King on Apollo. Really scary when Stixxay is still building up towards Infinity Edge. Huhi's going to want to finish Morellonomicon before they have those big crushing team fights. So for now, Envy wants to take more control and turn their focus towards this top lane turret.
And I've been loving Envy's itemization all series long, especially Apollo's, where he went for the Infinity Edge third item in the second game. In the third game, he went for the QSS as his second item after Blade of the Ruin King. And in this game, I'm looking at LirA, who has a Tiamat early. It's something you don't see from Rek'Sai's anymore. You see the Cinderhulk into the Knight's Vow to protect somebody, but now he's even going Knight's Vow immediately afterwards. So the Tiamat was just so he has even more early pressure, keeps his foot on the gas pedal so he can do things like this and try to bully the jungle.
I love build diversity in League of Legends because there are so many ways you can adapt to different situations. And all too often, you see people just copy and paste the same build from game to game to game. Leave the cookie cutters at home with grandma. Adapt your builds as you go in-game. Adapt to the situation.
You're talking about adapting builds. Adaptive Helm, first item for Nisqy. Last time, it was a Abyssal Mask because he wanted to up the magic damage of everybody on the team. Even with the Cho'Gath and the Varus, he still went for this item because he's against the Cassio. The adaptability of these guys, it just seems very high right now when that's something that personally I never held as kind of something Envy had done. We were think back to the game where LirA was against a whole bunch of physical damage dealers and he wasn't buying Ninja Tavi, he bought like a Spirit Visage. So itemization seems to be like on point for him.
Lessons learned for Team Envy. And honestly, that kind of feels like a summary of this series for me. This seems like a team who has learned so much from the mistakes that we have talked about that have crippled them in the past.
Yeah, and when I look at something like that, you can say, oh, they're itemizing well. That, to me, speaks of focus and clarity. They are present in this series. They know what they need to do, and they know how they need to itemize right from the get-go, and they aren't dropping any tiny things like that.
And knowing what you need to do, that's what you brought up earlier, Jatt, is what CLG needs to do to actually win this series, because they need to have a coherent game plan for this.
Yeah, and they need to find a way to reset to what worked for them in the regular season. It was moving around the map faster than the opponent and then catching someone in a rotation somewhere. They have gotten a lot of control wards and they have the upgraded sweepers on the jungler and support, but the picks have just been ahead of them on Envy, right? Hakuho has stopped Aphromoo from making the right roam plays, and before the game we're saying they're one game away from elimination. Well, now they're 10 to 15 minutes away from elimination if they aren't able to come back in this game because of how much playmaking Envy has. What they can hopefully bank on is still late game scaling of Cassiopeia, but the more skill shots that Aphromoo misses, whether it's the Q or the ult, the lower their chances of getting enough gold to come back in this game become.
Yeah, he misses them, but Apollo, he just walked towards the Cassiopeia there to dodge that, where it could have been a petrifying gaze. But Apollo, like I said, these guys are present. They're focused, and you could tell Envy are saying, we are going to win this. They are pushing forward, and now they just need to keep their foot on the gas, like I've said multiple times. Apollo, though, playing out of his mind.
Ocean Drake, 20 seconds from now. That'll be Elemental Drake number 3 this game, spawning only 30 seconds later than its counterpart did in the previous match. So very similar timestamps being grabbed here by EnVy, always grabbing those objectives early, grabbing them consistently, and then staying on top of those spawn timers as the game goes on to make sure that that control continues. Just another marker of a team that is so much more in control of their macro game than the 10th place team that a lot of people remember from spring.
Yeah, call them the best 10th place team that we had ever seen. Now we're seeing their macro where they're actually setting up for a potential pivot between Baron and the Dragon. And here comes Seraph, so you won't have to TP.
Move up, stolen away. Here comes the fight. Big taunt onto 2. Seeing if they can maybe make this fight. Having the chains come in. Huhi having to slither away. OmarGod going to be target number 1. Hero's entrance right back into the middle of the fight, but the Gnar is now going to be transforming. Careful about the Mega Gnar. It finds only Nisqy. Seraph makes his way into the fight a little bit too little, a little bit too late. As EnVy walks away, no kills under the belt, but 2 flashing health bars on CLG.
Yeah, and these fights are becoming brawls, and that's, even though Huhi was caught, he was able to get a decent amount of damage out, and EnVy didn't have 5 people there for the fight, but you get to see the amount of defensive stats they've already built up because they face tanked for quite some time and walked away completely fine.
Yeah, that is actually an EnVy teamfight win in my book because the summoner spells, nobody flashed. Huhi flashed, OmarGod flashed, so the engage is less, and also the teleport, double TP over Darshan, who was forced to use his, so EnVy actually won that.
Looks like CLG wants to keep going though. They have Bard ultimate up, not much else. EnVy used a lot of ultimates in that last fight. Still have Feast, so you can't steal this away from EnVy. Here comes Galio.
CLG wanting to go for the fight. They're able to find the stun down onto that enemy support. They grab the kill onto Hakuho. Stixxay taking the credit onto that one. LirA going to be forced to back up now. Seraph with the flash away. CLG. Huge team fight for them, as now they're about to make it a 3. Stixxay with a double. The Hakuho connects! Darshan with the wallop right into the ground!
And Captain Flowers, what did we say about CLG getting back to basics, rotating faster than the opponents, and having more people there when they go for the fight? In the river, or sorry, on their side of the jungle, they don't win the fight, but they have the numbers advantage. Then around Drake, Nisqy's there for the flank, but the fight's over by the time he arrives. Now they're going for the home run. They got a few runners on base. This is a really risky Baron for us.
Yeah,
Nisqy's hanging around. See if maybe he can stop this. Baron dropping pretty quickly though, below half HP. Almost down to about 1/3 now. Nisqy going here into the fight. It's Apollo who's been caught out. The shutdown for Huhi. Nisqy now having to defend. The single damage threat is gone. Nisqy goes down 2. Darshan with another. Seraph TP's in only on a suicide mission as CLG will find 3. They lose OmarGod. The Baron is stopped, but 3 more kills go their way.
Yeah, Seraph with the Feast there onto OmarGod to stop them from turning back onto the Baron and having the smite down.
The roller coaster this game is becoming is huge. Hero play after hero play. And Hakuho, that's a mallet Gnar, man. It's hard to get away. It's gone.
Uh-oh. All right. EnVy now seeming very, very shaken.
That's about 6 kills in a row, it feels like, for CLG, save for OmarGod going down. And it's one after the other. I think I can. Look at LirA. Darshan takes him a half health by the time they go in, and then Hakuho's out of the fight. He can't make the initiation, so they're all kind of out of sorts, never setting up the right front line for their super tank team. You got 4 frontliners. How do you not set it up? They try the flank, and their carries all get killed.
Yeah, Nisqy had gone top lane to push the wave and get the 1-3-1 pressure on, but they had simultaneously decided to try and do the Drake. They had double TP advantage, and now they just threw that away because they decided not to just group up and go for that and try to go for a flank instead.
And the max range petrifying gaze into explosive cast onto Apollo, huge, since he is such a big damage dealer that could have potentially killed them at Baron. I mean, just kept healing for kill after kill.
All right,
got a little close.
CLG has closed half of that gold gap that was standing between themselves and EnVy, but they've still got a little bit of a ways to go.
Yeah, and the team EnVy needs to be very far ahead, so they're still trying to force fights. The super frontline team needs to kind of snowball the game to be really effective.
I mean, once this game goes towards the end, Apollo is going to be the only damage threat on EnVy, while CLG is going to have both the Tristana and the Cassiopeia. Really, really got to be careful of that if you are EnVy. Yeah, a couple more of these bad fights could really just make this game impossible. Varus ulti not going to find its mark. However, the Bard ulti does. Seraph taken low. Hero's entrance coming in on top of multiple members of CLG. But a knock up 1-2. Stixxay off the side, having to run away. The cast back onto LirA, who goes into the ulti mode, now finding himself in the middle of 5. Taken down by OmarGod. CLG grabbed the kill.
This game is turned in a big way. They do not have the damage to get onto Huhi or Stixxay. They're just gonna keep going at him.
Still looking to make the fight. Nisqy grabs the taunt onto a couple of different people. Apollo still walking away, but Seraph goes down. Hakuho trying to run the dredge line to get himself away. Nisqy with the taunt.
Oh, they went
Grab
through.
the kill onto Aphromoo. Apollo trying to fight, but he's not long for this world. The double for Darshan, the triple for Darshan. The 8 for CLG.
And this game looked like EnVy had complete control, and it was gonna be CLG starting to bleed out, but they say no, and they start making those plays and punishing EnVy both at the Drake and around the Baron now.
Experience paying off here for CLG in high pressure moments. Being down 7,500 gold 5 minutes ago to now being even in Baron and in control of the game. Watch this fight and pay attention to CLG's carries. The Galio team needs to be able to get on the carries, but no one can get to Huhi, even though he was basically melee range at the start of the fight. He kites back, and even with interrupting the Stixxay rock jump out of the side of the fight, no one can follow up. LirA ends up going back in, it turns into a suicide mission, and then CLG is allowed to chase. But just look at the health bars. Everyone is so healthy as they continue this chase through.
But the EnVy should have disengaged this. That should have been one where they just cut their losses, lose one person and back up. They stayed around in the bush way too long. And like we said, because Apollo is one of the big damage dealers on this team and he was full HP, it looked like they felt confident to stay around and that they would have enough durability to protect him, but that was not the case here with Huhi and Stixxay.
And the way EnVy is funneling into these fights, not as a team, incoherently, it definitely feels like they are flustered right now against CLG. And it's gonna get worse before it gets better.
Stuns, damage, grounding out onto the Galio. He does manage to get himself away, but to say the momentum in this game has reversed is an understatement. It jumped up into the air, did a backflip, landed and ran the other way as fast as it could. CLG is running away with this now in terms of the tempo and the pressure.
Yeah, first time in the game, CLG now have a gold advantage, and it's above 2,000, almost 3,000 now, whereas before, down over 5.
And they're not stopping. CLG push machine is fully online. The gears are turning. They're needing to win this game. They know it, and they're looking to do it as cleanly and quickly as they possibly can.
And the entire series, we've talked about how EnVy have drafted for early game. Once again, they've won a lot of their lanes in this series, this game, but CLG held out, got the crucial team fight around the Drake, rubber banded back into the game, and now the late game composition with the Tristana and the Cassiopeia, as well as the more relevant jungler at this point in the game with Gragas, is online.
And top lane, I want to go back to top lane because the Gnar for CLG, as soon as they got it in this draft, we talked about how they wanted a repeat of game 1. And man, if they didn't get it, Darshan is back in form.
Yeah, he didn't have the same early dominance he did in game 1, but his impact in team fights, picking up these kills, has now turned him into that dominant force. And even with Stixxay, who was over in the top lane just now as the Dragon respawned, EnVy does not have the confidence to move forward in what would have been a 5v4 to get Drake. That is just more evidence that this game is completely in CLG's control right now.
And honestly, what even is your win condition now if your team EnVy? You said it yourself, Jatt. This team on the side of EnVy, this super tank squad with one VIP, they need to be really far ahead to force these fights. I don't even know how you force a fight into Stixxay and Huhi at this point.
Yeah, it has to be some type of flank, and they don't have the best delivery system for a Galio. You would want to say Hakuho should jump in there with the dredge line, but he's too squishy. Even with the Galio ultimate, he's probably going to fall down. So at that point, you're thinking maybe LirA can flash engage, but you got the cleanse onto Huhi, and you do not have a QSS onto Stixxay, so that would be your only chance, is getting a knock-up on him into a Galio ult, but that might not even be enough to do it.
Even then, the Bard can ult him, buy a couple of extra seconds, keep him safe. CLG now continuing their push down the top side.
And that's been something with EnVy's team composition. They picked for great lanes, they haven't picked for great composition, so when the gold does equalize, you can really see CLG start to take over.
Looking for a fight. Seraph couldn't land the Q, and they just disengage, and now they're getting run all over the map.
CLG has not let EnVy catch a breath since that throw at the Ocean Drake. They move up, they secure the vision in the enemy jungle. They put so much damage on the LirA. He's now going to be forced to back. 1/4 HP left. CLG switching back and forth between top and mid lane, keeping the pressure applied wherever possible. 6,000 gold there in power play. Definitely one they can be proud of. A little bit more damage onto that mid lane. Tier 3 takes it down. Stixxay grabbing the credit, and we're on to inhibitor number 1.
Still got the turret even when Baron had expired because the wave clear option for EnVy couldn't quite get everything out.
Right now, EnVy are saying they don't want to just give this up. They need to look for a skill shot pick onto somebody. Hakuho went fishing there and got nothing, and so just ended up going down.
First inhib just shy of 34 minutes. CLG now up 6,000 gold. They were down 6,000 not too long ago. It was actually just about 10 minutes ago that the throw occurred, which means in just 10 minutes, CLG has caused a 12,000 gold swing for themselves. Half of that from the Baron play they made, as they now continue to push down the top lane, looking for inhibitor number 2. A grab out onto Darshan. That's not quite the guy you're going to be looking for. Root makes its way onto Huhi. Grounding down onto Seraph. Explosive cast back. Hero's entrance coming in to keep him alive. OmarGod staying back. Darshan still on the front line. Nisqy running away. Grounding onto him. Taken down below half means he's got to get back and heal. Meanwhile, the minion wave arrives in CLG. No signs of stopping. OmarGod, the only person hurt. LirA off the side. Seraph still looking to knock these guys up into the air with the rupture. But forward they go, and there comes your petrifying gaze! Stixxay goes on a rampage. The 1 damage dealer is dead. Seraph follows. As now CLG is looking to bring us to game number 5. They regroup middle. They push with the minions. The crowd is behind them, and they are going for their win. 5 versus 3.
Big play by Huhi right there. You thought maybe CLG was going to slow play for the next Baron, but they go for the jugular right now.
Nisqy jumping in, trying to find his way onto Huhi, but he's got the shield. He's able to keep himself alive. Stixxay with the damage, the domination over LirA. Nisqy's not able to do much of anything. The double kill over for Stixxay. CLG, 1 Nexus turret goes. The next one's going to as well. Darshan looking to pad those stats just a little bit with another kill onto Hakuho. But the rest of CLG doesn't care. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to scrape some silver. We're going to game 5.
And CLG, OmarGod talked about it with their teamwork and the fact that they're like a Hydra. Bottom lane got cut off, ended up dying 2-on-2 early game. It looked really bad for them. But then the team fighting came online, the Drake happened, and then it just seemed like all of that gold, you're like, where the hell did that come from? 12,000 gold swing in a matter of minutes. CLG, when he said when you give them an inch, they're taking a mile, and that's exactly what we saw when they got back in.
Yeah, and if the bottom lane is the Hydra that got partially decapitated that game, 18 of 19 kill participation after that point. So it regened real fast. Huhi 17 of 19 as well. So all of that, when you have kill participations that high, all of it comes through team play. They grouped better than EnVy did, and EnVy was that wall of tanks that we saw doesn't have much of a fallback pattern. So they fell behind, and that was it.
And that seems like the difference between a team that has been to MSI finals and a team that has been playoff champions before and a team that is now trying to make the push to prove that they're worthy of that. The team play, the experience, how that team works together. But for a deeper dive on exactly how they do work together and how they tied up the series, let's send it over to Dashmark and Kobe.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm surprised to say we're going to a game 5, but we are, and I need you guys to help me understand how the heck CLG was able to pull this one back and tie it up at 2-2.
Well, just looking at team comp real quickly, I mean, obviously you can see with the Cassiopeia and Trish, you're going to outscale Galio and Varus for the most part. Both teams have strong front lines for the most part, and it's going to come down to, you know, if you do reach that late game, CLG will probably win.
And that has been kind of a common theme in the types of teams that these two teams have been drafting. EnVy, much more early game, as that's where they have had success, and CLG been going for the late game. But kind of the moment where we really realized the comeback was happening was around that mid-game dragon fight and the team fighting and the amount of gold that goes over to, you know, a backline like Tristana and Cassiopeia. We've seen so many games turned around.
Well, we have that play, so we can roll it out for us. I mean, this is the thing, though. This is why I asked you to help me understand this, because EnVy had such a significant lead going into this exact fight.
Yeah, and look how they spread out, though. This is a very chaotic team fight for them. They mentioned it a little bit in the cast. They're like, oh, they have 4 frontliners. how are they not setting up for this team fight? And it's kind of a one tank goes in at each time. So CLG did a very good job of focus fire. They immediately turn on one tank at a time. First Hakuho, chunk him out. Then they turn on to Seraph there, and they chase down those kills.
And it transitions right into this Baron play because they instantly run up there trying to convert on this, and EnVy kind of just funnel in one at a time to do anything they can to stop this. This is a play that could keep going better for CLG. Some misplays by OmarGod in the back end of this play keeps this Baron alive, but at the same time, this is a massive influx of gold coming into the carries of CLG, and the fact that, like we said, they're going to eventually outperform their counterparts, and that's kind of what happened. Those two fights catapulted the gold closer. It went down to around 4,000 from that, and when you're at 30-ish minutes in the game, suddenly the Trist and the Cassiopeia become way more effective.
That's why one of the things we examine very carefully are cutting off bad plays, basically cutting a loss short so that you don't continue to bleed over gold. If you count up all of the extra kills that they got in kind of the straggling play there, like 8 minutes long or something, they got almost like 9 kills as people kept feeding in and getting picked.
That's something we typically laud Korean teams for, is their ability to disengage, recognize a lost fight, cut their losses as best as possible, and then extend the game saying, all right, we'll concede the kill or 2, but we're not going to concede 3 kills, a dragon, 3 more kills, and pressure around the Baron.
I mean, that's something that CLG themselves need to look at as well. It's not just EnVy who are making these kind of mistakes. We need to remember that in the early game, CLG was like a bit of,
they got into a hole to begin with.
They were a bit of a dumpster fire, being
We were prepping a segment on how we're going to have new teams in the playoffs, and we're going to have new teams in the finals, and new representatives at Worlds.
Yeah, and then those plans got entirely thrown out the window. Well, we'll save them until after next game. Perhaps they become useful. But I want to push us ahead to our final replay here. 29 minutes into the game, CLG picking up the ace in the mid lane. Again, there's only 3 minutes after that last replay that we just saw.
Right, and that's what we're saying and how important it was to get that influx of gold, because now, as well as the fact that they played this team fight out pretty well, where Aphro is able to snipe out Apollo there and stop all DPS, because this is a 4-tank comp. Once you cut out that damage dealer, you just focus down front line, and like you said, one at a time, just hit the closest target. Stixxay almost gets caught out, but he's able to reposition, and then from there, they just focus down LirA. They're going to get a chase down as they continue to go, with Bard being able to give them a lot of mobility here, and this is really where they're able to get complete control back of the game, because down 4,000 versus EnVy, you still need to execute well, and this was the team fight that, was kind of on CLG's terms. This wasn't just an EnVy mistake. CLG actually played this one really well.
Yeah, they did. We talked about the pros of their draft as well, as far as team comp or late game team fighting, and we got to see a lot of it here.
I'm glad to see the Gnar getting picked up too in the first phase of picks, not letting it get banned out in the second phase.
Darshan has been an absolute monster. Look at that damage dealt to champions graph as well on the Gnar. Not only does that come from split pushing, but he's also huge in the team fights, big initiations.
Well, and he's Gnar into quadra tank, right? We just talked about the fact that they have such a huge tank line. Well, you've got a tank that can actually deal with that.
I think the other thing too is that just generally over the course of the series, Darshan's been playing well. Seraph did, in some regards, get the better of him in game 2 and 3, but it was mostly off the fact that the bot lane was going so disastrously. Seraph picked up stray kills and teleport plays and things like that, and then he got advantages over Darshan. It was not like he was beating him in lane, and I think if they can keep getting Darshan good matchups, that's going to be huge for them in this game. They're going to be moving on to their pick on side, so if they really wanted to, they could potentially swap things around and make sure that they can get the counter pick on Seraph.
Yeah, definitely agree. That's been huge in this.
Guess
I know
what?
you wanted to know.
No, I'm going to tell you, CLG chose red. No, I was just asking, since you brought it up, CLG did opt to swap sides for the first time in the series. So moving to red for the game, or for the match decider here. Kobe, I'm going to throw it back to you. What were you going to do?
I mean, we saw kind of a very big difference. Darshan has been able, when he has one of those advantageous matchups, to really leverage some pressure onto Seraph. The one where he had to early pick the Maokai, though, and then Seraph got a counter pick with the Trundle. People were talking so much about the success of the split pusher. It really does set Seraph up for so much better, and completely changes the face of the game. So maybe CLG with that red side pick are going to flip the script.
What's the answer for EnVy here, though? Because once again, we saw them build an early lead, except for this time, their downfall was the fact that, they couldn't scale past a certain point in terms of damage. Is it just simply taking more damage-oriented champions so that when they secure a 5th lead in the early game, they can actually close it out this time?
I would say just double down on the strategy you've been doing. It's been working basically every single game. Game 1 and Game 4, they make some mistakes and it gets away from them. But here on blue side, we'll have to see if CLG's bans change up, because they did sneak the Thresh ban in this game, which I think was actually monumental, because even though they still lost the bot lane, Hakuho didn't have the saving power. You know, Nautilus can aggress like a Thresh can, but he can't save his teammates when they make these mistakes. So if CLG need to find a way to keep the Thresh out of his hands, because now on blue side, he can first pick it if it's left open.
Yeah, I mean, he was still creating plays on Nautilus, and he was doing so many things for this team. But as you said, still can't pick up the teammates if they do get caught.
All right, what about OmarGod and Nisqy? Let's go back to the rookies here and evaluate them through Game 4, moving into Game 5.
I think Nisqy had a decent performance overall, really good roams in the early game to get his team the leads, and then the late game, I mean, you're Galio, you're an ult, you're a Q, and then hopefully you're chain CCing something onto a carry, and that's not set up by you, it's set up by the rest of your team. Once they started losing, those opportunities disappeared, but I think he's been having a great performance even in this game, and it was once again another disappointment out of OmarGod.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very nice surprise, honestly, for me to see the importance of this Galio pick for Team EnVy and Nisqy's versatility as a rookie, coming into playoffs. It has worked really well for them as counter-engaged, but as you said, Omar, it seems important to get him on Gragas for CLG, so that's going to be a priority.
There you have it, 2-2. Game 5 is coming up, and a trip to the TD Garden is on the line. In just a few moments, we'll see if CLG or Team EnVy can book their flight to Boston. We'll see you soon.